A mafia kingpin traded his entire criminal empire for a single pancake breakfast with a daughter he just met. After losing his wife and discovering a massive betrayal by his own right-hand man, Dominic Moretti did the unthinkable. He teamed up with the FBI, dismantled his own syndicate, and walked away from the underworld forever to be a father. Discover the insane true story of the 6-year-old girl who brought down Boston's most dangerous crime family with one sentence. Alright guys, let us break down this insane opening scene together. We kick things off sliding through the quiet lobby of the wildly expensive Beaumont Hotel. It is a bitter Boston winter outside, but inside it is completely hushed. This tiny 6-year-old girl is just wandering around. Then the camera locks onto our main guy, Dominic, sitting stiff as a board at the mahogany bar. He has a glass of whiskey right in front of him, totally untouched. This boss refuses to drink because he needs absolute, terrifying control over every shadow in the room. But honestly, it brings up a real truth we all have to face eventually. The absolute worst disasters do not hit when your life is already a mess. They usually sneak up and destroy you the exact second you finally think you are in total control. As the camera zooms out, his crew is casually talking about buying up a massive 12-property hotel empire, acting like they are not running a syndicate. Dominic is 37, looking like he is carved out of ice, but pay attention to his right hand. He is wearing this heavy platinum ring loaded with 7 black diamonds. The crazy part, the matching ring was buried 6 years ago in an empty casket, tying this guy to some never-ending grief suddenly. That little girl walks right up to his bar stool, holding a ripped-up stuffed animal. Watching this play out is wild, but it drops a heavy truth bomb on us. Unresolved pain and trauma never actually stay buried in the dirt forever. It just waits patiently for you to let your guard down before it taps you right on the shoulder. We snap to this super tight extreme close-up. This brave kid just stares dead at the black diamonds on his hand. The background noise totally drops out as 8 heavy-duty guards step up, ready to draw weapons if a shadow moves wrong. But the kid does not even blink. She looks this terrifying boss dead in the eye and says her mom has the exact same ring. The reaction is insane. Dominic, a guy who orders brutal hits before breakfast, just flat out forgets how to breathe. All the blood drains from his face right under those warm bar lights. It honestly shows us something super real about being human. You can build massive, unbreakable concrete walls to protect your feelings. But one tiny ghost from your past can bring the whole fortress crashing down in a split second. Let us slow this unbelievable moment down to a crawl. Dominic is staring at this kid, totally paralyzed, and his eyes lock onto a tiny dark mole on her left cheek. His jaw is literally shaking out of nowhere. A frantic woman wearing a gray beanie rushes in and yanks the kid back. As she grabs her daughter, she looks up. Boom. The camera catches the exact split second their eyes meet, and reality completely breaks. Dominic is staring straight at the living woman he thought he put in the ground 6 years ago. The music cuts out into pure ringing silence. It is a mind-blowing plot twist that leaves us with a rough but true lesson. The past is basically just a huge loan, and sooner or later, life always shows up at your door to collect exactly what is owed. To really get why this vendetta hits so hard, you and I need to jump back in time. We cut to a brutal night 6 years ago. It is March 14th. Late at night, on a pitch-black, icy highway in Providence. Rain is absolutely hammering the windshield. Inside the car is Claire. She is 22. 5 months pregnant, and totally trapped in a toxic, controlling marriage. But tonight is different. She just got a sonogram showing she is having a baby girl. She is driving with one hand resting on that grainy picture like it is a lifeline. It points out one of the saddest ironies about life, honestly. We are usually the most wide open and defenseless against total disaster, the exact moment we finally let ourselves feel a tiny bit of real happiness. The dashboard throws a creepy blue light on her face as she calls Dominic in his Manhattan penthouse. She sounds super hyped as she tells him a daughter is on the way. Through the phone, we actually hear him laugh, a real, genuine laugh. He promises to be home by midnight, but the script completely flips out of nowhere. Hail starts blasting the roof like machine gun fire. Out of the pitch-black blind spot, a massive black sedan speeds up next to her, bam. The heavy car violently rams her right through the metal guardrail, sending her dropping into the freezing black river below. It is a scary wake-up call for all of us, no matter how perfectly we try to plan out tomorrow. The universe can always step in and rip the pen right out of our hands. Picture this insane scene with me. The camera literally dunks us underwater into a freezing nightmare. The only things keeping Claire alive are a shallow river bottom and a jammed seatbelt. The icy water blasts her lungs, snapping her awake. Up on the muddy bank, an off-duty nurse slides down to drag Claire out of the smashed car, but instead of thanking her, Claire does something completely unhinged. Covered in blood, she grabs the nurse by the wrist with feral eyes, begging the woman to just let her drown. It is so dark, but it drops a massive truth about survival. When the monster trying to ruin you is sleeping in your own house, playing dead is literally your only way out. Sometimes the ultimate move for saving your own life is just letting everyone think you already lost it. Look at the absolute tension in this shot. A bleeding woman is fighting tooth and nail against being saved. Elena has worked emergency rooms for 15 years, so she knows what normal panic looks like, but in Claire's wide eyes, she sees straight-up calculated terror, shaking from the cold. Claire rips that heavy platinum wedding ring off her finger. She shoves it into the nurse's hand with a crazy demand. If she dies, give it to Dominic. If she lives, do not tell a single soul. Elena smuggles her out, and by morning the news is running a sad story about a wife lost in the river. It teaches us something pretty dark about relationships. Sometimes the exact people who promise to protect you end up building the very cages you have to break your own bones to escape. The screen jumps from the river to a rainy graveyard. We watch this totally fake funeral centered around an empty casket. Miles away in some cheap motel room, Claire is sitting on a terrible mattress watching her own burial on a tiny television. Her hands rest on her baby bump. The camera stays locked on her completely blank face. Not one single tear. She figured it out. Only her husband and 3 friends knew which road she was taking. The betrayal is absolute. To snap the chains of this toxic nightmare, she has to destroy the person she used to be. She changes her name to Grace Bennett and ghosts completely. It leaves us with a rough but true lesson. Sometimes the only way to survive a massive fire is to willingly turn into ashes and let the wind blow your old self away. We fast forward 4 months, and the lighting finally gets warmer. Grace is holding her newborn baby, naming her Lily. It is a super tragic detail. Even while running for her life from this man, she names their kid after the only flower he actually liked. Then bam, we jump 6 years ahead. Dominic is standing alone in this massive, freezing glass office looking out over Boston. He looks like a Mafia king who conquered the world but completely lost his soul. His back is stiff, and his eyes are empty voids. It points to a heavy fact about life. You can build the most secure fortress out of endless cash and raw street power, but you will never build walls thick enough to keep out the ghosts that live inside your own head. Listen closely to how his own crew whispers about him now. They are terrified. They do not even use his real name. They just call him the Winter King. Dominic leans into this title because it matches his dead inside vibe perfectly. He survived losing his wife by completely turning off his humanity switch. His face is full of permanent, unfeeling lines. But here is the crazy twist. For 6 straight years, he has dumped millions into private investigators, obsessively hunting down every piece of rusted junk from that river crash. The guy is driven mad by a need for control. It highlights a real human struggle. Devastating heartbreak never really fades with time. We just stack up thicker layers of armor, praying the cold iron will somehow hold our broken pieces together. Stick with me through this final, insane twist. Dominic literally bought an entire junkyard just to lock up the rusted shell of her car. The cops wrote it off as a sad accident, but he threw cash at an engineer to rip the wreck apart. When the report came back, it hit him like a freight train. The brake lines were sliced with absolute precision. This was not some random crash. It was a perfectly planned execution. They handed him back her ruined shoe and a terrifying reality check. Someone deep in his inner circle betrayed him. This leaves us with a seriously dark thought. The absolute worst torment in life is not wondering if someone wronged you. It is knowing for a fact you were stabbed in the back, but having zero clue whose throat you need to rip out to get your revenge. Alright guys, today you and I are jumping right into the broken mind of a mafia boss. Get this insane plot twist. That coffin they buried 6 years ago was totally empty, just air. Standing next to Dominic, playing the supportive best bro is Ray Castellano. That same night, Ray pours the expensive whiskey, telling his boss to let the dead rest. Dominic is so shattered he numbly nods. Fast forward to now, and our guy is rotting in his dark office, staring at fake corporate papers honestly. This drops a massive truth bomb on us. We spend so much energy building thick walls to block out our obvious haters, but we totally ignore the real threat. The deadliest poison almost always comes from the exact same trusted friend who is smiling and pouring our drinks. Keep your circle tight. Look at how this scene is set up, because the vibe is absolutely crazy. It is high noon in this massive lobby. But you can instantly tell Ray is pulling all the strings. He picked the spot and totally controls the room. Dominic is barely breathing, completely hollowed out by his loss. His hand is glued to that heavy desk, thumb constantly spinning his platinum wedding ring in the light. It is pure muscle memory at this point. Deep sorrow literally rewires your brain, guys. When Marcus suddenly bursts through the doors, Dominic does not even flinch. The outside world is dead to him. It makes you realize that the absolute worst kind of prison does not have iron bars. Real imprisonment is all about those heavy emotional anchors we refuse to let go of. You have to learn to drop the baggage before it pulls you under. Marcus and Dominic have 25 years of mob history. Marcus takes one look and instantly recognizes that empty stare of a man checked out of reality. Dominic just looks toward the Boston harbor and mutters that some wounds never close. People always say time heals everything. But that is a total myth. Time just forces you to get strong enough to carry the baggage. Marcus quietly backs out, but wait. Here comes the massive plot twist. The scene suddenly cuts 35 miles south to a little girl drawing stars and walking right beside her. It is the exact same woman the whole world thought died 6 years ago. Absolute chills, guys. We learn a hard lesson here. You can legally change your name and completely ghost your old life, but you can never truly outrun the dark history you carry inside your own soul. Look at how she is playing this undercover. She works as an average public library clerk, living in a tiny apartment while her little girl names the trees outside. It looks super peaceful. Right. Wrong. That cozy vibe is a total fake-out. Her library job is just a cover identity to secretly dig into mob property files. She is moving like an absolute ghost, leaving 0 digital footprints every week. She drives 40 freezing minutes into another state just to use a sketchy public computer to plot her massive vendetta. It is a crazy reminder for all of us. Sometimes what looks like a boring, quiet life is actually built on pure, desperate survival instinct. We learn that the absolute best way to protect yourself from a dangerously toxic world is to just become completely invisible to it. Get a load of her ultimate weapon. It is not a gun, just a beat-up leather notebook. When her kid asks about it, she smiles and claims it is a boring grocery list, but bro, under that sweet mom act, that book is a straight-up hit list. 47 Mafia targets. She spent 6 years planning how to tear down her old crime family. The irony is beautiful. The woman they tried to murder is now the ticking time bomb, destroying their empire. She even tricked an old journalist into feeding her secret intel. It is absolutely savage. But honestly, it teaches us something real. We survive our worst trauma by adapting to whatever the hard times demand. It reminds us that our deepest, most unfair pain often transforms into the exact fuel we need to finally take our stolen power back. Listen up, because for 2 solid years, Harold is quietly feeding her the dirt his publishers were way too terrified to print. This is how she tracks down the phantom black sedan that literally rammed her off a freezing highway. Dummy corporations fall apart like cheap dominoes, pointing a bloody arrow right at the Bianchi syndicate. But here is the absolute wildest plot twist. The rat who sold her out was someone deep inside Dominic's trusted inner circle. Somebody handed the mob her exact coordinates. It just goes to show you that the knife that takes you down never comes from a stranger. It is always held by someone eating at your own dinner table. She is quietly hunting ghosts before packing lunchboxes, proving that true healing only happens when you finally face the harsh betrayals you try to ignore. As the sun goes down, she picks up Lily. Guys, this kid is so sharply analytical the teachers joke she is basically a miniature lawyer. Their evening routine is totally ordinary, boiling cheap pasta and singing Lily to sleep while the kid hugs her battered stuffed cat. But the second that apartment falls into absolute silence, boom, the leather vengeance notebook comes out. The real heartbreak is that little Lily looks at a blurry photo and genuinely believes her dad is a hero. It is a beautiful lie Claire built from scratch, because kids have this fierce instinctive mercy. Deep in the closet, buried under heavy winter coats, sits a wooden box hiding a heavy platinum ring. It reminds us that sometimes we have to bury the most painful pieces of our past just to protect the fragile piece of our present. She custom-ordered that exact ring for Dominic back in the day to match her own, but on that freezing morning when the hitman came to wipe her out, her pregnancy swelling made her leave it sitting right on the dresser. The ring they eventually buried with her fake corpse was literally just a cheap decoy for 6 long years. The real platinum band has been sitting in the dark, waiting for a spark, and yesterday, Guys, she gets it. Chilling in the break room. She flips through a Boston paper and sees a charity gala photo. Dominic is standing right there with the hollow stare of a ghost. And hovering right behind him is his senior counsel. It is totally wild. But the past always finds a way to prove that our buried secrets absolutely refuse to stay hidden forever. She is practically burning a hole through that newspaper. The guy in the photo looks older, sure, but those eyes are an exact match. They are the same remorseless eyes she stared into through a shattered windshield in the freezing rain. The trauma hits her so fast, she barely makes it to the bathroom before losing her lunch. It is a harsh reminder that life loves dropping agonizing truths on us when we are least prepared. By nightfall, she books a Cambridge hotel and 2 train tickets. She tells Lily they are going on a fun birthday trip, and the kid falls asleep totally hyped. Meanwhile, Claire is wide awake in the dark, tracing that cold diamond hardware. Seriously. You simply cannot heal from a severe wound while you are still fiercely gripping the very weapon that cut you. Stick with me, guys, because you and I have seen this tragic pattern before. It is the dangerous illusion of the perfect operation. Phase 1, infiltrate. Phase 2, verify the backstabber. Phase 3, evaporate. She does not have the firepower for a shootout today. She just needs cold proof. She parks her daughter at a table with apple juice and that stuffed cat for comfort. Claire gets down on her level, giving strict mom orders to stay frozen, hyping it up as a fun game to count people wearing red scarves. Lily nods, totally clueless about the massive danger around them. Claire takes a deep breath and marches straight toward the elevators. But look, our most carefully constructed plans always fail when we forget to account for the unpredictable chaos of human life. Listen up, guys, because her execution is absolutely flawless. She strolls down the corridor, looking like a totally clueless tourist to slide past the brass signs. She peeks through a cracked door, and boom. Target acquired. Ray sits at the head of the table, wearing black leather gloves indoors like an absolute weirdo. The identification is a 100% match, and she ghosts out of there before the guy even blinks. Pure perfection. But down in the lobby, reality hits hard. Lily counts 43 red shirts to stay frosty until a random guy walking a tiny terrier totally ruins her focus. It snaps her right out of the zone. Here is a solid life lesson for you. The normal chaotic world keeps spinning right past you, even when you are busy plotting your absolute darkest vendetta. Picture this chaos. A toy drops off a chair, and a tiny kid dives under the table like she is dodging crossfire. She peeks out from the linens, and a literal mob boss steps into frame. The dim lighting catches this massive platinum ring on his hand, stacked with 7 black diamonds. It is the exact same ring her mom keeps hidden like a state secret. Driven by unhinged toddler curiosity, she sneaks up behind him. Dominic hits the mahogany bar, demanding water with 1 green olive, his edgy Mafia signal telling his muscle to chill suddenly. He feels a tiny yank on his sleeve. He looks down and bam, a 6-year-old is staring straight into his soul. Look, life teaches us a brutal truth. The smallest, most innocent hands are always the ones that completely dismantle our thickest armor. You and I need to watch this closely, because the tension is off the charts. The camera pushes in on this stone-faced boss and the tiny girl staring at his glass. The whole room is totally clueless to the mental breakdown tearing through this dude's chest. He waves off his lethal hitmen with 1 shaky finger. He might be the apex predator of the city, but right now he is totally cooked. She casually mentions her mom's jewelry, and you can practically hear his heart flatline. He chokes out a single name from a locked throat, Grace. We always have to remember this harsh reality. The hardest, coldest hearts shatter the fastest when they get struck at the exact perfect angle. The kid just wants his olive, completely clueless to the massive ghost she just dragged back from the dead. Look at this insane close-up on his dead eyes. Dominic slowly traces the curve of her little jaw, absolutely locked onto the familiar mole on her cheek. He hands her the green olive, his hands shaking like crazy, and then boom, the ultimate jump scare. A woman's voice slices through the club music like a rusted machete. The lighting suddenly gets ice cold. Every Mafia survival instinct is screaming at him to look away, to protect his criminal empire. But love is an absolute death trap, so he turns around. There she is, standing in the shadows, completely paralyzed with pure fear. Take notes, guys, because the lesson here is brutal. You can bury your dark past under 50 feet of concrete, but the ghosts we truly love will always claw their way out of the dirt to find us. Let us pause the video right here, you and I, and just appreciate this absolute mess. 6 years of acting like a totally dead inside widower gets vaporized in 2 seconds. Dominic is halfway out of his chair. Terrified this ghost will just vanish if he blinks. But check the background. The gold elevator pings, and Ray struts in. The camera snaps to his top hitter. A dude who normally drops bodies for breakfast suddenly goes completely pale, from across the room. Claire locks eyes with him and sees that pure unfiltered panic. Life is funny like that, is it not? The darkest truth you spend your whole life gatekeeping will always kick down your front door when you have zero backup. She grabs the kid's hand and absolutely books it out the side exit into the shadows. She leans over that invisible line, her voice shaking like crazy. She literally begs him, swearing that if he ever actually cared about her, he will not follow her, and he definitely should not trust the guy standing right behind him. Then she dips through the glass doors and is totally swallowed by the city traffic. The camera stays on Dominic at the bar. He is absolutely frozen, glitching out holding his drink. It is a wildly toxic irony. But getting exactly what you cried over for years will ruin your mental health way faster than losing it. His right-hand man Marcus is freaking out, but Dominic is stuck on mute. Then Ray casually strolls up. This absolute snake fixes his expensive cuffs, wearing his fake best friend mask without a single visible slip-up. You have to pay attention to the audio here. Ray is talking, and his voice is totally level. No stutter, no panic. Just a guy pretending everything is chill. The camera circles around Dominic as he stares down the dude who stood next to him at his wife's fake funeral. He scans this guy's tailored suit, looking for a glitch, and boom, there it is. One single bead of sweat dripping down Ray's forehead. Claire's warning is looping in Dominic's head. His face drops into absolute zero emotion mode. Guys, this is the ugliest truth about the real world. The knife that drops your health to zero is never held by the enemy. It is held by the teammate guarding your back. Dominic tells him to go upstairs, waits for the doors to shut, and then just completely collapses onto the bathroom floor. Check out how violently his hands are shaking against that sink. He has not crashed this hard since the cops handed over her ruined dress years ago. He is staring into his own dead eyes in the mirror, literally forgetting how to breathe. The dark math is doing itself in his brain. That kid had his exact eyes and her mom's vibe. This was not a glitch in the Matrix. His wife is alive. But she actively chose to let him rot in misery. Why? Because his top enforcer is the actual villain of the story. Listen. The absolute heaviest weight you will ever carry is the horrible truth you have to decode all by yourself. She stayed a ghost on paper because playing dead was the only valid strategy to protect their kid from the two-faced psycho Dominic invited into their own house. Stick with me here, because this is where the drama goes nuclear. He splashes ice water on his face, and in 4 minutes the sad widow era is over. And the ruthless Mafia king logs back in. The camera follows him strutting into this massive glass boardroom. The corporate suits are just yapping about margins, totally blind to the insane showdown starting right in front of them. It is wild how an entire room of highly paid professionals can completely miss a war zone. The AC is on max. But Ray is sweating through his designer collar. Dominic just watches him furiously scratch his wrist out of the corner of his eye. It is the guilty tick of a rat. The reality is, we get so comfortable in life that we never bother to check our own water cooler for poison. Watch the tension stretch until it completely snaps. Ray looks down at his tablet and literally chokes. He stutters out a $4.2 million typo, an error so bad that some sweaty intern has to jump in and correct him. Guys, in 10 years of handling dirty money and zeroing enemies, this dude has never dropped a single syllable. Dominic just smiles at him. It is this totally unhinged, dead inside smile as he signs the paperwork, but the second those boardroom doors click shut, the mask falls off. He drags Marcus into a dark corner, his voice dropping to a crazy low whisper. He wants a full background check on Ray, no stone unturned, because at the end of the day, when your entire empire is built on a massive lie, the roof is just waiting to cave in on your head. Marcus literally slams against the drywall, catching the absolute demon energy radiating from his boss. Dominic stares down the empty hallway and whispers that he finally found the rat who set up his wife. Smash cut to his massive, totally empty mansion later that night. The vibes are totally depressing, just one single light bulb keeping the shadows away. He pulls this busted wooden box out of a hidden safe, something he has been too scared to touch for years. Inside is a faded photo and a stained letter. He just slides down the wall, totally losing it. Here is the worst glitch in human programming, guys. The pain of losing your person never actually gets smaller. We just upgrade our mental armor to survive the daily damage. He traces the handwriting, letting the tragedy destroy him. Sprawled out on the expensive hardwood, this Mafia don just starts laughing. It is the completely unhinged cackle of a guy, realizing his entire tragic life was just a script written by a traitor. The camera aggressively pans across the river to a way worse neighborhood. We find Claire literally freezing in this nasty, flooded alleyway. Her escape plan was absolutely top tier, though. She fed fake locations to the driver, paid in pure cash, and vanished into the gritty underground. You can learn a lot from a mom in panic mode, when everything you care about is on the chopping block. Pure paranoia is the only buff that keeps you alive. She rents a garbage motel room using her old alias, Grace Bennett. She is officially off the grid, dodging the devil she used to live with. Let us step into this absolute dump together and just feel how suffocating it is. It is basically a concrete prison. Way too low level for the hitman currently tracking her, the second that cheap door closes. She slams 3 rusty deadbolts and yanks the nasty curtains shut. There is only this one creepy yellow bulb fighting off the darkness. Standing in the grime, her tiny kid is clutching a teddy bear, begging to go back to their nice safe house. Honestly, this is the most brutal part of going rogue. It is having to explain the absolute darkness of the real world to a kid who has only ever known the tutorial level. Claire slowly drops to her knees, grabs her kid's shoulders, looks into those terrified eyes, and drops an absolute order to stay silent. And the kid just nods. Let me set the scene for you guys, because this is absolute peak cinema. We are chilling in the shadows of this dingy, low-budget room watching a mom just entirely lose her grip. Claire is on her knees, holding her kid's shoulders, whispering frantically that they are never going back then. Little Lily drops a total nuke on their existence. She asks if they are running from the dude with the matching wedding ring. The camera zooms in on Claire's face, and her soul just leaves her body. She thought she dodged him in the lobby, but this kid drops the receipts, the gold chains, the drink, the guards. It really goes to show you something simple. You can spend 10 whole years building a flawless fake life, but one honest word from a kid will burn it to the ground. The tension here is suffocating. Claire is literally shaking, trying to explain the unexplainable to a 6-year-old. She tells Lily this guy from the lobby is a straight-up predator and they need zero noise to survive. We have seen tough mob bosses cry over less. But Lily, she takes this absolute nightmare fuel with total ice in her veins, calmly asking if the safe man knows the monster is here, wild. Claire quietly boots up a cheap burner phone to make a move. Honestly, it teaches us a pretty raw lesson about life. Kids are hardwired to survive. They see the dark, messed up truths we try so hard to hide from them, and they handle it way better than the adults do. The clock is officially ticking down to 0, guys, and the stakes are impossibly high. We zoom right in on Claire shaking hands as she dials the only contact saved on that plastic burner. Elena picks up, and the silence is deafening. No basic greeting, just straight panic mode. The predator spotted them, and the kid needs a safe house like yesterday. Elena does not even blink. She just jumps in her car to drive 2 hours into the pitch black. That hits hard, and it proves a real point. When everything falls apart, extreme trauma locks you away from the world, and only real, unquestioning loyalty can pull you back from the edge. Claire ditches the phone, grabs a pen and absolutely tears into a piece of hotel paper. Meet me at Taddy on Charles Street. Come alone if you still love me. Do not tell Ray, the trap is set, and it is going to be explosive. Now watch this chaotic domino effect play out. Some local kid pockets $40 to slide a crisp envelope under the heavy doors of a massive Beacon Hill mansion. 2 hours of agonizing silence go by, then the Don himself, Dominic Moretti, steps into his hallway. He glances down and within a millisecond, he recognizes that handwriting. Before he even picks it up, a physical shockwave blasts right through his chest. It is the exact same gut punch from 6 years ago, when he was told his wife was dead. It is a brutal reminder of a simple truth we all have to face. You cannot just bury your deepest grief and expect it to stay dead. You can plaster over it all you want, but that unprocessed trauma is just waiting in the dark to knock you flat all over again. The camera just orbits Dominic in his dark, moody office. He keeps reading those 4 sentences on a loop, absolutely frozen. He looks like a busted king, haunted by a literal ghost now. Stick with me here. Let us jump across town to a depressing Cambridge hotel. Claire has her hand pressed against the icy window, whispering into the void, begging her husband to give her the strength to finish this insane mission. It brings up something we all learn eventually. Even the toughest survivors out there realize they cannot carry the weight of the universe solo forever. But here is where the plot twist gets totally sick. Cut to 30 floors up. Ray is staring into a massive mirror in his luxury penthouse. A penthouse Dominic bought him to reward an absolute, total lie. You guys really need to appreciate the pure, toxic poetry of this backstab. Dominic literally handed the keys of his Mafia empire to Ray. He gave this whole crying speech about brotherhood, which Ray totally weaponized later. Right now, in his insanely expensive bathroom, Ray unbuttons his silk shirt. The bright lights hit a horrific jagged white scar ripped across his ribs, stitched up by some terrified butcher in 1996. Right after Dominic's dad ordered a hit squad to wipe Ray's entire bloodline off the map, 6 shooters turned a family dinner into a total bloodbath. It leaves us staring at a super dark truth about human nature. Those massive, unhealed wounds hold crazy power, and they will slowly turn a victim into the exact monster they grew up hating. Just imagine the absolute horror show playing on repeat inside Ray's head. Picture a little kid locked in a freezing meat locker, listening to a hit squad drop his dad and uncles right outside the door. He literally survives by playing dead inside a wooden crate, his blood mixing with the mess on the floor. Some random butcher sews him up in the pitch dark, permanently sealing all that rage inside him. Raymond Falcone completely died in that freezer. He bounced to the Bronx, grabbed a fake name, and totally deleted his own humanity to become Castellano. It is a super heavy reality check for all of us. When you shove your trauma deep down instead of actually dealing with it, that pain does not magically vanish. It just mutates into something incredibly toxic and lethal. The sheer psychotic patience on this guy is almost fascinating. 30 solid years of living off pure spite. He trips up to Montreal, pays a doctor to literally chisel him a new face, and drops cash on a vocal coach to wipe out his old accent. Then 12 years ago, he pulls off the ultimate big brain move. He pays a hitman to shoot at Dominic and miss on purpose. Ray cuts his own arm to make it look crazy, then dives in front of a bullet for the boss. Dominic is out here crying over his hero. Zero clue he just invited the architect of his total destruction to the cookout. It proves exactly how dangerous blind trust can be. When someone goes out of their way to bleed for you, they can easily hack your emotions into seeing a loyal friend instead of a total snake. Let us look at the exact moment this whole thing goes totally off the rails. Ray has been sweating it out for years, waiting for the perfect strike. Then 6 years ago, Dominic casually leaves a sonogram on his massive desk. Claire is 5 months pregnant. Normal people see a baby. But look at it through the twisted, completely fried brain of a guy who lost everything to him. That unborn kid is just the enemy's respawn point. It shows you exactly how destructive revenge actually is. A heart completely hollowed out by hate totally loses the ability to recognize innocent life without even flinching. Ray grabs a burner phone, hits up his underground cleaner named Sal, and greenlights an absolute nightmare. Rent-free revenge just leveled up to a whole new tier of evil. The hit goes down sickeningly fast. Some mechanic gets a fat stack of cash to slice the brakes, and a hired goon runs Claire's car straight off an icy highway bridge. Fast forward a few days, and Dominic is totally wrecked, crying over an empty wooden box. And guess whose shoulder he is crying on? The exact same dude who ordered the hit. Ray is just chilling there, patting the grieving dad's back like a total psycho. Snapping back to right now, Ray finishes his scotch, staring out over Boston. His brain is short-circuiting because the ghost is real. He literally just saw Claire breathing in that lobby, holding her kid. It drops a massive truth bomb on us. No matter how flawlessly you build a fake life on top of lies and bodies, the truth will eventually claw its way out. We need to talk about the absolute gigachad energy Claire had in that lobby. She made dead eye contact with the guy who tried to assassinate her, and she did not even blink. Total stone face. Ray knows exactly what that means. You force someone into hiding for 6 years. They stop being prey and start being the hunter, sweating with paranoia. Ray pops open his wall safe, grabs a black phone, and calls Sal, spitting out that the mom and kid are still kicking. Sal tries to talk him down, saying maybe they are just running. But Ray knows if Dominic finds out, it is literally game over. Sal quietly gives the green light to take them out. It is a chilling life lesson. When pure fear takes the wheel, our survival instincts will bend over backwards to justify pure evil. Pull up the roots, Sal tells him. It is this weirdly poetic mob slang for the most messed up thing you can do, taking out a little kid. Ray hangs up and instantly pings a Black Ops hit squad from the absolute gutter of the city. These goons do not care about Dominic. And they definitely do not care about old-school Mafia rules. Ray just feeds them the stats, like a total robot. Dark hair. 6-year-old kid with a plushie, standing at his glowing monitors. Ray literally hijacks the syndicate's entire security network to scan the Boston grid. There is a deeply tragic lesson hiding in this exact moment. The massive walls and insane security systems you build to keep your family safe can instantly be flipped around to destroy them if the wrong guy gets the admin password. You and I are unpacking the ultimate betrayal today. Picture this. Ray sits in the dark thinking he pulled off the perfect crime. The screen glows on his face while he furiously deletes every trace of those fatal 13 minutes. He slams the laptop shut, hands shaking. But here is the massive plot twist. This clown has zero idea Dominic already tripped a silent backup that morning. Ray struts away thinking he is untouchable, completely oblivious his treachery is caught on camera. By the next day, he is totally unaware his funeral is basically planned. Meanwhile, Elena drags herself up the hotel stairs. The simple life lesson here. The very shadows you use to hide your absolute worst mistakes are exactly what will expose you when the truth finally comes to light. The camera shifts to Claire, standing like a statue behind a heavy door. She yanks it open before Elena even knocks. Totally on edge from years of looking over her shoulder, Elena steps inside, giving the kid a huge hug, but little Lily is frozen solid. She mindlessly brushes her stuffed animal. Then Lily drops a total bomb, asking if her mom is going to see the guy with the matching ring. That innocent question completely shatters Claire. Her tough exterior crumbles, her voice shaking as she admits she is going back to see the boss. Lily just stares, totally absorbing the heavy drama. Here is a simple life lesson. Kids do not just ignore the chaos of a broken home. They quietly build a literal suit of armor out of the sharp pieces just to survive the cycle of pain. Watch the absolute shock hit this little girl. She gasps as she realizes the mob boss father she thought was dead is actually still breathing. Claire drops to the floor, wrapping her daughter in a desperate hug to hide her tears. She leans in and plants a risky seed of hope, swearing he is actually a good guy and begging her to trust him. Lily just nods. Then she hands over her beat-up stuffed toy, whispering that it keeps people safe. That leaves Claire completely speechless. Elena swoops in, grabs the kid, and bolts down the back stairs to a black getaway car. In seconds, they vanish. The simple life lesson here cuts deep. A child will always give up their own sense of safety just to help heal the broken adults who shattered their world. Stick with me, because you and I are going to unpack exactly how insane this gets. While her kid speeds away, Claire does the unthinkable. She walks straight back into the literal mouth of the wolf. She struts into a fancy cafe, which is crazy ironic considering her dark mob reality. Claire grabs a corner booth, hiding that stuffed toy in her lap. She keeps checking the door with pure panic in her eyes then. Right at 9:58, the door swings open and walks the Don himself, Dominic, completely solo. The tension in the room is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The simple life lesson is brutal. You can literally run to the opposite end of the earth, but you can never outrun the dark shadows and past mistakes you refuse to turn around and confront. Get a load of this scene. The ruthless Mafia king completely vanishes right before our eyes. Dominic drops his tough guy act, wearing a plain coat. For a split second, he is not the lethal boss anymore, just the heartbroken guy who loved her. The second he spots her, his brain completely short-circuits. He freezes in the doorway like a deer in headlights. Slowly, he drags himself over, and they sit in agonizing silence. Claire grips her teacup like a weapon. Dominic puts his hands down, and boom. You see the wedding band he never took off. He tries to say her name, but his voice totally cracks. She just whispers an apology. The simple life lesson. The heavy mask of fake toughness will always shatter the second a person faces the ghosts they truly loved and lost. Dominic violently shakes his head, trying to deny the nightmare. But Claire is done holding back. The dam totally breaks. And she dumps 6 years of hidden trauma on the table. She talks a mile a minute, terrified she will lose her nerve. She drops the massive plot twist about the cut breaks. The giant truck and the freezing river, the craziest part. She literally had to erase her own identity to survive the mob. She talks about giving birth in a dusty hideout and becoming a total ghost with 47 fake names. She pulled off the ultimate disappearing act. The simple life lesson here is harsh but true sometimes. To survive the absolute monsters trying to take you down, you have to completely destroy the innocent version of yourself and become someone untouchable. The tension goes completely off the charts as she breaks down her master plan. She maps out a fake company and a web of lies pointing straight to the rival Bianchi family, then boom. She drops the ultimate bombshell. She tells him she saw his right-hand man, Ray, driving that killer truck. Dominic turns into absolute stone. The only thing moving is his hand clenching into a lethal fist. This is the ultimate tragedy. Claire stayed dead because she had no clue who pulled the strings. One slip up, and the mob would take her kid. She spent 6 brutal years hunting for proof to bury Ray. The simple life lesson is clear. Loyalty means absolutely nothing when you realize you built your life inside a house surrounded by backstabbing wolves. You and I need to appreciate how crazy this next part is. Dominic stares her down, jaw completely clenched. The Mafia boss is back in action, promising to literally burn the city to the ground. He talks about their lost time, and she fires back that she counted every single day. But here is the massive problem. While they have this emotional reunion, a sketchy sedan is idling right across the street. Claire whips out a notebook, treating it like pure gold. She whispers about the truck plates, thinking she finally has the upper hand. She has zero clue there is a target on her back right now. The simple life lesson is a wake-up call. The exact second you finally relax and think you are totally safe, that is exactly when you are the most exposed to an attack. She leans in close, whispering all the crazy details about the truck. She points out the serial numbers tying the hit directly to a rival cousin. But here is the absolute kicker. There is no hard proof pointing straight back to Ray. Dominic just nods, throwing on this terrifyingly calm poker face. Then he casually drops the craziest plot twist yet. He tells her the brakes were slashed just 48 hours after they found out she was pregnant. Claire totally freezes as the absolute horror hits her. The hitman was literally hanging out inside their living room. The simple life lesson here is seriously wild. The most dangerous threats in your life are not the random enemies at the gates, but the fake friends sitting right next to you at the dinner table. Let that massive betrayal sink in for a second. Only 4 people on Earth knew about the baby: the boss, the wife, the doctor, and Ray. Dominic zones out, rewinding his memories. He remembers Ray casually strolling into the office during that hyped-up phone call, then quietly backing away. Dominic actually thought the guy was just being respectful. What a joke. Claire sees right through it. Ray was never polite, he was plotting a hit. The realization is totally disgusting. Ray was basically a rat, funneling all their secrets to the rival family. Every piece of advice he gave was a total setup. The simple life lesson here: patience is not always a flex, sometimes. It is just the preferred strategy of a snake waiting for the perfect time to strike. Watch how fast this heartbreak turns into pure revenge. Claire is dead set against rushing in, and Dominic completely agrees. His voice drops low. The ultimate sign that the Mafia king is ready to destroy lives. He lays out an absolutely insane plan. He is going to walk into the office, shake hands, and literally smile at the dude who tried to wipe out his family. Ray will not sense a single drop of anger. While Ray is totally clueless, Dominic will have his crew tear his life apart from the inside out. He puts Claire in charge of using her fake identity to trap the rivals. It is a masterpiece of payback. The simple life lesson is golden. True revenge is never just a loud tantrum. It is a completely silent, calculated takedown that leaves your enemy with nothing. Dominic reaches across the table, ready to weaponize her survival skills. You and I need to see how he plays this. He totally needs her ghost identity to track the dirty money, connecting Ray to their enemies. He whips out a paper and jots down a literal lifeline. Just an address, 4 digits, and a secret code word. He tells her about this crazy off-the-grid bunker and begs her to disappear right now, promising to meet her after dark. Claire pockets the paper, and you really want to believe they have won. But then the camera pans out to the freezing street. The universe just loves crushing people who think they beat the system. The simple life lesson for you: thinking you are the absolute smartest person in the room is always the fastest way to get completely wiped out. We zoom in on Dominic, and this guy is literally one bad day away from snapping. He asks about his boy, and Claire gives a tiny nod. The kid is safe in the shadows. Suddenly, the room goes dead quiet. Dominic freezes. His jaw trembles like crazy, because he is staring at a literal ghost. He whispers with this heavy, monstrous grief that he wanted to straight up butcher Ray on the 34th floor. But no, he promises a slow, beautiful ruin instead. Claire reaches out, brushing his knuckles to lock in this unholy revenge pact. She wants Ray entirely shattered before he takes his final breath. It is absolutely wild to witness this dark communion, but here is a lesson for you, sometimes pure. Unfiltered hatred weaves a much stronger bond between 2 broken souls than love ever could. Let us reframe the shot. You and I, we pan out from this fragile little bubble of intimacy, straight into the freezing gray street outside. Dominic looks at her hand on his, and a low, genuine laugh escapes his chest. Guys, it is his first real sound of life in 6 agonizing years. But tragedy never takes a day off. Cut to a Cezanne parked across the rain-slicked asphalt, through tinted glass. A hitman adjusts the heavy lens of his camera. The focus ring turns, locking onto the underworld king sitting wide open with a supposedly dead woman. The shutter clicks, and the photo flies through the digital ether, straight to Ray. The lesson here is brutal but true. When you live in a vicious world built on pain, exposing your heart in the broad daylight will always invite your total destruction. The scene smash cuts to a high-contrast penthouse. Ray is staring at the glowing screen of his phone. We push in tight on his widening eyes as he studies the photo. He spots the gray hat, the familiar slope of her jaw, those absolutely haunting eyes. The blood instantly drains from his face. The ghost he literally created is back for revenge. The sheer terror of his collapsing mob empire immediately twists into blinding rage. He barks an order, his voice cracking with pure desperation. Grab Claire the second she is alone, and rip the kid's location right out of her, miles away. Claire steps onto the bright pavement, totally believing she is safe. Huge mistake. Here is the ultimate reality check we all have to face in life. No matter how incredibly fast you try to run, your dark past will always be faster. We track Claire from a low angle as she pulls her cap down against the freezing wind. She moves with the nervous energy of hunted prey, plotting her epic escape through the concrete jungle. A quick subway ride, a walk through the park, and a vanishing act into the fog. Her illusion of control dies in exactly 90 seconds. We pan to a shadowed doorway across the avenue. Look at this, guys. Tommy is standing there like a coiled spring of pure violence, tracking her every single step. As she turns north, the young Mafia enforcer drops his paper and slides into the river of pedestrians behind her. The agonizing tension in this frame is absolutely insane. She has no clue she is guarded by a loyal shadow. Here is the lesson. True protection, just like real love, rarely asks for any applause in the broad daylight. The frame violently shakes as the quiet street totally shatters. A dark van slams on its brakes. Tires screaming and 2 armed goons pour out. Tommy is already making his move. He roars her name, screaming at her to run for her life. The sheer terror in Claire's eyes right now is insane. She spins and sprints blindly into the screaming crowd. A massive gunshot rips through the air, smashing into the brick inches from her skull. Tommy drops low like a true pro, his weapon barking twice, and the first hunter crumples. But tragedy always demands a toll, right? The second shooter fires, tearing a round straight through Tommy's shoulder. Blood sprays everywhere, but fueled by pure devotion. The kid refuses to stay down. The brutal lesson here. True loyalty means carrying the heaviest burdens, even when you are actively bleeding out. We smash cut back to the cafe, catching the exact second Dominic's soul turns to absolute ice. He moves with this terrifying grace, crashing his chair backward as he bursts out the doors. The screaming of the street fades, and the sound design narrows to just his violent heartbeat. Down the block, Claire is completely out of time. She scrambles toward the granite steps, gasping for air, but her legs give out. She trips and crashes hard onto the stone. Before she can even get up, a huge shadow falls over her, and a brutal hand clamps around her wrist. Dominic is sprinting, his face a total mask of pure agony, but he is just too far away to reach her. It is a devastating, pulse-pounding scene. Here is the terrible truth we all must face in life. Sheer willpower alone can never bridge the gap when your time officially runs out. Let us freeze the frame right here. You and I, watch how Dominic rounds that corner. There is literally zero moral hesitation, a single thunderous shot echoes, and the goon gripping Claire drops like a sack of bricks. She is hysterical, clawing at the concrete. Dominic does not even say a word. He just reaches down and scoops her fragile body into his arms, shutting out the wailing sirens, out of the smoke. Tommy staggers forward. Blood is pouring through his fingers, yet this wounded kid only wants to know what his mob boss needs next. Dominic coldly orders him to clean up the mess and summon the getaway ride. A black transport glides up to the curb. It is a masterpiece of dark violence. Here is the big lesson. True love, in its rawest form, is measured by exactly how much of yourself you will sacrifice to protect it. Direct your attention to the front seat. Marcus is sitting in the shadows of the transport like an absolute anchor of cold stone. This guy spent the morning nursing black coffee and a loaded pistol. The door slides open, and Dominic thrusts Claire inside while police lights bounce off the windshield. In the pitch darkness, Claire is shivering violently. Terrified her hidden life is over, Dominic speaks in a totally calm voice, explaining this insane chaos was necessary to force Ray out into the open. But guys, The real emotional plot twist belongs to Marcus. He turns around to look in the back, in a fraction of a second. The stoic armor he has worn for 6 whole years instantly shatters. He is staring directly at a ghost. It proves a deep lesson. The human mind is incredibly fragile. When suddenly slammed with a miracle it spent years grieving. We let the camera linger on Marcus, taking in the agonizing depth of his grief. For 6 years, he was the guy who packed away her stuff. He sat on the floorboards, pouring whiskey down Dominic's throat, just to stop the mob boss from pulling the trigger on himself now. The woman they mourned is breathing in his back seat. His jaw trembles. He stammers out the heaviest truth they buried an empty coffin for her. Claire tries to apologize, eyes brimming with shame, but Marcus just pulls off his glasses. This battle-scarred enforcer actually begins to weep like a child. There is zero anger, just the crushing relief of a massive burden lifted. He whispers how deeply her loss destroyed the man she loved. As they roll into an underground bunker, we learn a powerful lesson, true. Unwavering loyalty will always outlive the grave. The camera pulls back as massive steel doors lock with a heavy thud. Welcome to the Mafia underworld. This bunker is a tomb of monitors and weapons. A monument built out of one man's terrifying paranoia. Marcus hangs back to stitch up the bleeding kid, while Dominic leads Claire into the silence. Watch how his body language softens, shifting from a vicious predator back into a gentle lover. They sink onto a gray sofa, and his scarred hand reaches up to touch her cheek. Guys, it is their first tender connection in thousands of days. He whispers a deep vow that she is finally safe, but the tragic irony is suffocating. This impenetrable fortress is really just another cage, designed to bind her to his dark world forever. Here is the life lesson sometimes. The most dangerous prisons we ever find ourselves trapped in are the ones built entirely out of love. Let the lens linger on this twisted embrace. Dominic's voice drops into a possessive rumble, promising she is never leaving his sight again. Claire just completely breaks. Her exhausted frame collapses against his chest. She totally surrenders, letting 6 brutal years of running melt into the warmth of the man who represents her greatest danger. It is the darkest romance imaginable, finding your peace in the arms of the monster who controls you. Meanwhile, we cut back to the penthouse. Bathed in freezing cold blue light, Ray's phone buzzes. The hit totally failed. His men are dead, and the ghosts survived. The camera circles him as his untouchable mob world shatters into dust. The mighty emperor is stripped bare. The lesson is obvious. A life built entirely on deception will inevitably crumble the second the bitter truth refuses to die. The phone line clicks dead. Ray is left standing there, staring through the glass at a city that genuinely does not care if he lives or dies. You and I need to pause here and look at his face. The realization hits this guy like a physical blow. All the fractured puzzle pieces finally snapped together. Dominic was at the warehouse. Dominic pulled the trigger, and Dominic took his wife back. The terrifying math is simple, and it is entirely fatal. The Mafia king knows exactly who betrayed him. Ray takes a ragged breath, realizing he is totally trapped inside the criminal syndicate he helped build. He actually believed he could outsmart a monster. Here is an undeniable life lesson. The higher you climb on a ladder built from pure deceit, the more devastating the impact will be when the brutal truth pulls you back to the earth. This guy is backed into a corner by his own messy betrayals. Ray is shaking, smashing a passcode into his steel wall safe. Pure panic mode is activated. He ditches his identity, grabbing a fake Canadian passport, massive stacks of $100 bills, and a hard drive stuffed with 12 years of toxic secrets. Every trackable phone gets dumped into a running sink. Then he grabs a cheap burner for the ultimate desperate move. He actually calls Sal Bianchi. Ray helped build this Mafia empire from dirt, and now he is handing the front door keys to their biggest rival. Absolute snake behavior. It leaves us with a totally brutal life lesson. The exact same architect who builds your bulletproof fortress is always the one who knows exactly which bricks to kick down. Let us get into this shady deal, because this is where a guy completely sells his soul over the phone. Sal Bianchi lights up a cigar like he could not care less. Bianchi sounds totally bored, telling Ray he is already a walking corpse and demanding one good reason to actually care. Right then, any tiny shred of morality Ray had left just evaporates. He stops panicking, and without missing a beat, he drops the exact location of the boss's innocent daughter. He is literally feeding a kid to the Mafia wolves just to buy himself a few more hours of breathing. The camera locks onto his dead eyes, soaking in the absolute betrayal. It teaches us a real heavy life lesson. Extreme panic always burns away our polite masks. proving if we actually have any true honor left inside us. Check this out. The street noise totally fades as Ray goes full robot mode. He knows all the weak spots of the kid's bodyguard. Perfectly timing the exact second the sun comes up for the handoff, Sal exhales slowly, accepting this totally filthy trade. Ray crushes the burner phone under his shoe and vanishes into the fog like a ghost. Then bam, the scene cuts super hard. Now we are up in this freezing penthouse boardroom. Dominic is standing by a massive table, staring out at the city skyline. His beat-up enforcer and his silent right-hand man are standing right behind him, looking like the last survivors of a crumbling Mafia empire. It is seriously intense. There is a huge life lesson here, guys. You can study the criminal underworld all you want, but you will never actually be able to tame the monsters you choose to create. The vibe in that penthouse is unbelievably tense, practically choking everyone in the room. Tommy is pacing the floor like a madman, clutching his busted arm and begging Dominic to just launch a full-on street war. But the boss just stands there, totally frozen against the cold glass. When he finally opens his mouth, his voice is creepy and dead. He knows Ray cleaned out the safe and ran to Bianchi, which means a massive bloodbath is happening. Marcus steps up, dropping the harsh truth that Claire and the kid are about to get targeted hard, but Dominic barely blinks. He turns around and casually drops that his driver is already moving the girl up some snowy backroads. Total boss move. The life lesson here is harsh but real. You do not win your battles by freaking out and reacting. You win by moving your pieces before the enemy even sees the board. Look at how the camera zooms in to show how insanely lonely it is at the top of a mob empire. Dominic actually used a dead guy's name to stash his daughter in a freezing cabin up in Vermont. He kept his own crew, and even Claire. Totally in the dark about it. The lighting makes him look downright evil as he drops his cold logic. If Ray's goons snatch Claire off the street, she literally cannot snitch if she does not know the location. Mind blown, Claire steps up, her voice totally breaking, begging for just one last chance to hold her kid. Dominic looks at the only woman he actually loves, tightens his jaw, and shuts her down completely. She just closes her eyes and cries. This brings us to a super painful life lesson sometimes. The absolute heaviest price of keeping your loved ones safe is forcing yourself to cut them off entirely. The awful silence breaks the second Marcus tosses a buzzing phone onto the massive desk. Claire grabs it instantly, and the screen lights up the gloomy room. Suddenly, there is this little kid on video chat, her cheeks red from the freezing wind, hugging a blanket. Dominic completely freezes up. You can literally see the exact moment the guy forgets how to breathe, for the first time ever. This terrifying mob boss is looking at his own daughter. He is totally speechless. But this brave kid leans into the camera, staring into his soul, and says she already knows who he is. She whispers that her mom keeps his picture hidden inside a box in her closet. Absolute tearjerker. We can pull a totally solid life lesson from this. Real love does not always need to be out in the open, because our strongest bonds survive on the quiet memories we fiercely protect. The tough guy armor of this crime lord completely shatters from a look from an innocent kid. Dominic lets out this super broken little laugh. A single tear drops down his face as he whispers that he is doing okay, just because he finally gets to see her. But come on. You know how these insane revenge stories work. Any happy moment gets instantly punished by total violence. The video time jumps 48 hours into the future, and Boston is in absolute shambles at 3 a.m. A massive fireball lights up the sky as a rival warehouse gets blown to bits by sunrise. Some lone hitman strolls into a diner and wipes out 5 enemy guys eating their breakfast. It is pure madness. The psychological life lesson here is crystal clear. True peace is basically a massive fake-out. Just a fragile illusion living in the tiny gaps before the next major disaster hits. Stick with me here, guys, as we dig into the worst parts of this trash city together. The morning news has the local cops giving some totally pathetic statement, covering up the fact that half the squad is on the Mafia payroll. 3 captains are cashing fat checks from the Moretti crew. 2 belong to Bianchi, and regular folks are getting wrecked. Down in a depressing federal basement, Agent Chen is already chugging coffee, staring at a corkboard and connecting the insane dots. Meanwhile, Dominic is turning his fancy penthouse office into a straight-up war bunker. Armed goons are swarming the garages, and massive steel blast doors slam shut with a huge crash, locking out the entire world. This hands us a totally grounded life lesson. When the systems that are supposed to protect you become completely rotten, surviving is entirely up to you and absolutely no one else. The air up in that penthouse is getting super thin right now. Tommy is doing laps around the room like a trapped animal, trying to act tough just to ignore his busted arm. Claire is literally vibrating with anxiety. She locks eyes with Dominic for 1 second before yanking open those heavy wooden doors. And guess who walks in? Harold Finch. He is this old dude clutching a beat-up leather briefcase, like it is an actual shield, for 30 solid years. This journalist has been hunting the crime family, writing down every single dirty lie and murder now. He just strolled right into the boss's lair. Dominic steps out of the shadows, sticks his hand out and gives the old man a serious nod of respect. Wild stuff. It leaves us with a truly mind-blowing life lesson. The exact same hater who spent decades exposing your worst flaws might be the only genius who can actually save your life. You and I are about to witness a guy's entire universe totally shatter. Harold sits at the huge table, and his shaky hands slide a faded 1995 photo right under the bright lamp. It is a picture of the Falcone family. He drops a massive bomb about the awful night Dominic's own dad wiped them all out over stolen drugs. Except for the youngest kid. The camera zooms in on that old photo, the jawline, the crazy dead stare. It is a flawless match for Dominic's absolute best friend, even with all those secret plastic surgeries. The insane plot twist is right there. Ray is actually the missing Falcone kid, all grown up and ready for payback. The life lesson here hits like a total freight train. You can build the absolute highest security walls on Earth to keep villains out, but it means absolutely nothing if you casually invite your own executioner to sit at your dinner table. Dead silence just completely swallows the room. Dominic stares at the faded picture, muscles locking up as his entire reality shatters. He lets out a hollow whisper. Get this, guys. This monster ate at his dinner table for 12 straight years. Ray actually married Dominic's own sister, shared a bed with her, even gave her a kid. The twisted patience it took to pull off a long con like this is genuinely terrifying. Dominic swallows down the urge to just start swinging. Instead, he grabs his phone, calls his sister, and sounds totally cold. He tells her she has exactly 90 seconds to grab the kid and run. Banking on the survival instincts from their brutal childhood. It really proves a heavy point. The absolute worst betrayals do not come from random enemies on the street. They come from the quiet, smiling threats you invite right into your own house. Today, you and I are going to unpack this insane story together. Look at how that trauma bond from their youth instantly kicks in. Sophia drops the phone like it is on fire, grabs her baby, and ghosts right into the shadows meanwhile, up in a fancy boardroom. Harold pops open his ledger. He is tracking $4 million sliding through Zurich, the absolute lifeblood of Raymond's long game. Harold actually thinks a paper trail will make the mob hand Raymond over. Bro, are you kidding? Dominic just stares at the city lights. Eyes completely dead. He knows Raymond is tucked safely behind Bianchi's muscle. You do not politely ask for a monster. You drag him out into the street. It drops a harsh truth on us. Having the right answer means absolutely nothing if you lack the actual power to back it up. Consider the bleak math of this mastermind. Dominic knows Salvatore is not running a charity. The guy wants a huge return for hiding Raymond. And Raymond is straight up desperate, starved to end Dominic with his own hands. They need serious bait to draw him out, which means using Claire. But look at her body language here. Her spine is rigid, her jaw locked tight, after 6 years of terror. She is totally done playing the helpless victim. She insists on standing right in the fire, over in the corner. Marcus quietly maps out a brutal ambush. They feed a fake tip to a dirty driver. Here is the real-life lesson. The loudest person in the room is almost never the real threat. The true danger is always the quiet one in the corner, silently shifting the pieces. The camera swings over to a nervous dude named Delaney. Marcus caught his shady little tells months ago, realizing this guy was pocketing enemy cash. Instead of straight-up taking him out, Marcus turns this traitor into an absolute cheat code. He sets up a flawless trap, letting Delaney stumble onto a massive lie. The bait is too juicy. They make him think Claire is meeting a prosecutor at Rialto on Friday night to sign papers that will permanently cook Raymond, blinded by greed. Delaney rushes to pass the fake tip to his bosses. Back up on the 20th floor, the real master plan stays completely locked down. It is a harsh law of survival for any conflict. The most lethal weapon you can ever build is simply letting your enemy believe they are the smartest person in the room. Just look at the perfect geometry of this setup. The owner of Rialto owes his life to Dominic, so a fake panic over bad fish is arranged, leaving the place empty by 7. High above the street, Agent Sarah Chen is basically invisible in a parking garage. her rifle totally locked in. Claire is removed from the danger zone. Sitting in her seat is an FBI decoy rocking Claire's iconic gray wool cap. As Friday night rolls in, Dominic sits perfectly still, glowing in the pale light of 8 security screens. The lesson here is written right into the shadows, and you should take it to heart. True success never comes from charging blindly into a messy situation. You secure the ultimate win by carefully building the cage before the wolf even realizes he is hungry. Stick with me, guys, because the tension in that room is absolutely suffocating. Claire rests her hand on Dominic's neck, keeping him grounded while his mind races. Tommy is posted by the door like a literal stone gargoyle. Right at 8:15, a pitch-black sedan rolls up looking like a hearse. Raymond steps out onto the freezing pavement. Dominic watches the monitors like it is a slow-motion car crash. Raymond is so paranoid he insists on taking the shot himself. He pushes into the dark restaurant with 3 massive heavy hitters behind him. Across the room, that gray cap sits in dead silence. This perfectly shows a tragic flaw we all share. When pure obsession completely takes over your brain, you will ignore every blazing red flag and march straight to your own doom. This is where the illusion straight up shatters. Raymond stalks past the empty tables like a starving wolf. He raises his weapon, totally ready to end it, but the setup glitches. The shoulders on the target are slightly off. It is clearly not Claire. Before his brain can even process the mistake, the ceiling explodes in a cloud of white dust and federal agents drop in. Pay close attention to Raymond's eyes here. You do not see surprise, only the freezing cold stare of a cornered predator. He utterly refuses to surrender. He screams in Italian and starts firing wildly, shooting right past his own crew. Absolute chaos breaks out. It is a brutal scene that teaches a real lesson. A truly selfish person will gladly burn down everything around them just to save their own skin. While the room erupts into a literal war zone, Raymond somehow vanishes into thin air. We follow him sprinting down a back hallway, tearing through the kitchen and disappearing into a damp basement. He busts out a side door and throws himself into a getaway car before anyone can blink. Back in the restaurant, the damage is heavy. 3 of his guys and 2 agents are down. The trap snapped perfectly shut, but the monster slipped right through. This is the tragic irony of Dominic's master plan. He thought he was outsmarting them, but Salvatore was staring at the exact same chessboard. It leaves us with a seriously harsh reality check. No matter how brilliant your plan might be, it completely falls apart the second you underestimate someone who has absolutely nothing left to lose. Now we get a dark look at the grim architecture of Salvatore's twisted logic. This guy operates with pure, calculating cruelty. While Dominic was busy building a fake spectacle, Salvatore saw straight through the noise. He knew Claire would be hidden close and totally off the grid. He skips the fancy hotels and aims straight for a quiet brick house in the South End. Inside is Marcus, an older guy who has not seen real action in years. The attackers do not even bother knocking. They just pack the front door with explosives and blow it wide open. This terrifying moment captures a massive truth about life, even outside the mob. Sometimes the heavy consequences of your past decisions show up totally unannounced, and the universe genuinely does not care if you are ready to face them or not. The violence here is insanely fast and ugly. Over in just 7 seconds, 4 figures rush through the ruined doorway. Marcus instantly goes into beast mode, flipping an oak table while his old revolver barks twice. Claire dives to the floor, grabbing a hidden gun and dropping the first attacker. But the second guy pivots and hits Marcus in the stomach. The older man goes down hard, though his fingers stubbornly keep pulling the trigger. Rough hands grab Claire, taping her mouth shut and dragging her into the night. One goon sees the blood and assumes Marcus is completely cooked. That is a massive mistake. This proves a massive point about pure resilience. Assuming someone is broken just because they are knocked down is foolish. A survivor with nothing left to lose is a terrifying force. Let us look at this piece by piece together, because it is wild. Picture Marcus bleeding out on the shattered floor, with his last ounce of strength. He drags his phone over and sends one ragged whisper. Miles away, locked inside his high-tech fortress, Dominic hears that awful sound. The radio slips out of his hand and hits the desk. In 1 second, all that mythical mob boss armor he wears simply vanishes. He is not some brilliant tactician anymore. He is just a terrified guy realizing he lost the one person keeping him human. It brings us to an absolute truth we all have to accept in life. You can build the thickest walls imaginable around your life and your heart, but true vulnerability will always find that one tiny crack to break you completely wide open. For a terrible moment, the legendary boss simply ceases to exist. He is just a frightened guy named Nico, staring at empty monitors, paralyzed by the thought of losing his family again. The mental shock is massive, but watch what happens to his eyes next. A heavy emotional wall crashes down. All that blinding pain turns into pure, freezing ice. His voice goes dead flat as he waves Tommy over. Dominic delivers a terrifying order. Every single person on their payroll needs to be at the garage by 1 a.m. to raid the waterfront. While Tommy moves out, Dominic calmly picks up the phone. It is a tough lesson in how we handle crises. Feeling sorry for yourself is a luxury you cannot afford when things fall apart. Taking cold, focused action is often the only way through the storm. The camera slowly pushes in right on Dominic's face. He calmly tells Elena to grab the child and move to their final backup location. You can see Elena is totally terrified, her chest heaving, but she forces it down like a pro. She agrees immediately, purposely choosing not to ask where they are going. It is a stunning display of absolute trust in a nightmare scenario. Dominic sees her strength. For just one agonizing heartbeat, he squeezes his eyes tightly shut to hold back the misery. Then he hangs up. Not a single tear falls. He packs all that pain into a box so he can focus on tearing his enemies apart soon after. The heavy door opens and Agent Sarah Chen walks in completely alone. This proves a really heavy truth. The heaviest grief does not always yell or cry. Sometimes it just quietly goes to work. You and I need to look at this final negotiation together, because the power shift happening right now is terrifying. Agent Chen walks straight into hostile territory all by himself, using a hospitalized lawyer to pin Dominic against the wall. The deal is brutal. To get his wife back, Dominic has to surrender to the feds, give up Salvatore, and burn his entire criminal empire to the ground. And guys, he does not even blink. He just stares at the security feeds and agrees to lose everything. He will strike the match himself to save the woman he loves. It is a harsh truth we all face. We only realize what actually matters when we are forced to watch everything else burn to ashes. Down in the dark, Claire finally opens her eyes. Picture the harsh glare of a single swinging light bulb burning over a rusted metal chair. Claire is chained to the cold steel. A thin line of blood drips down the side of her face, but if you look closely at her eyes, there is zero panic. Instead, she is calculating every inch of the room, mapping out her own survival. The heavy iron door grinds open, and Salvatore Bianchi steps into the light. His tailored suit is completely spotless. His empty smile holds on to 6 long years of silent, starving hatred. It is a heavy lesson to learn in life. Resentment is a patient parasite living inside the chest. It will wait in the absolute dark for years, just holding its breath until the exact moment you finally stumble and fall. The mental torture kicks off the second Salvatore steps close. His voice is soft but super sharp, demanding to know exactly where they hid the child. But watch the subtle tightening of Claire's jaw. She looks right past him, totally unbothered, claiming she knows absolutely nothing. She buried that secret in a vault he can never crack. Salvatore just tilts his head back and laughs, genuinely entertained by her crazy defiance. Then the vibe in the room turns toxic as Raymond Falcone steps out from the freezing shadows. Claire turns her head. After all these years of running, they are breathing the same bitter air. We cannot outrun our past forever. The ghosts of our oldest wounds will always track us down, until we finally turn around and face them head-on. You and I have to appreciate the massive power shift happening right here in this room. For 30 years, nobody even dared to whisper Raymond's real name out loud. But Claire leans into the light and completely wrecks his armor. She lists his hidden bankruptcies, his buried records, and his mother's tragic history. 6 years of quiet obsession turned into a deadly weapon in seconds. His ego completely shatters. His hands shake as he pulls his gun and jams the cold metal right against her head. But Salvatore just reaches out, gently wrapping his fingers around the shaking wrist to stop him. The kid has to come first. It is a terrifying truth about human nature. The people capable of the worst cruelty never rush the final blow because they want to savor the pain. It is 2 a.m, and a freezing wind rips through the rusted steel of the old shipyard. 30 men stand shoulder to shoulder in the thick fog, forming a tight circle. Mob soldiers and federal agents are literally standing side by side in a tragic, desperate team-up. Dominic moves through the dark like an absolute tank in heavy armor, but look closely at Tommy Russo. His left arm is shattered and completely useless, bleeding right through his coat, yet his right hand grips his gun until his knuckles turn white. He totally refuses to leave the boss who saved him. This is what true loyalty actually looks like in the real world. It is not just showing up when things are easy. It is the stubborn choice to stand by someone, even when your own strength is totally gone. What happens next is a beautiful piece of perfectly timed chaos. Agent Chen holds the line outside the gates, letting Dominic control the entire board like a chess master. A massive explosion rocks the east side of the yard, and a second squad violently cuts the main power lines. High above the floor, Dominic and Tommy crouch on the freezing glass of the skylight. Dominic stared at a faded blueprint of this building 3 years ago, and he still remembers every single hallway. At exactly 2:16, a heavy truck smashes through the front doors. A minute later, the lights die completely. It is a cold rule of survival that we often forget. When the lights finally go out and everything falls apart, only the person who spent time studying the shadows will make it out alive. The exact second the power dies, the polite mask of civilization simply falls away. There is one terrifying moment of dead silence, and then total madness takes over the room. Guys are screaming, heavy boots slam against the concrete, and bright flashes of blind gunfire light up the dark. But look at Claire. Relying on a plan she practiced 1,000 times, she snaps the rotting wood of the chair and frees her hands. She dives behind a massive steel shipping crate, finally taking her life back into her own hands. Up on the catwalk, Salvatore glides through the dark, completely calm, like a ghost walking through his own graveyard. The lesson here is incredibly simple. Fear is just a natural human instinct. But what you actually do with that fear is always a choice. Stick with me, because the tension here is insane. Salvatore drags Raymond up the rusted iron ladder by his collar, moving purely on cold instinct. Seconds later, a heavy rope drops from the broken glass above, and Dominic swings down into the dark. His boots hit the floor, his hands frantically feeling the broken chair. Finding it completely empty, the sheer terror of losing her literally stops his heart. But then, her soft voice cuts right through the thick gunsmoke. We can all see exactly what this does to him. He begs her to run for the safety of the feds outside, but she grabs his arm and refuses to let go. Real love is never just about shielding someone. It is about having the courage to step right into the line of fire together. There is a heavy, quiet poetry in this single moment. Dominic stares into the absolute dark, feeling the terrible weight of what is coming next. Without saying a single word, he presses a heavy gun and a folded knife into her shaking hands. She takes them, her fingers wrapping around the cold metal, finally accepting the hardcore violence of their reality. They move up the vibrating metal stairs together like a real team. Up ahead, Salvatore hides behind a steel container, bleeding from his head. The old king fires blindly into the dark, desperate to hit absolutely anything. Dominic does not blink. He pulls the trigger twice, shattering the old man's shoulder and dropping him to the floor. Life teaches us this over and over. If you hesitate when everything is on the line, you lose. The old crime boss hits the ground in a pile of expensive wool and broken bones, totally removed from the fight. But the worst part about trauma is that it never actually sleeps. Out of nowhere, Raymond lunges forward, slamming the hot barrel of his gun against the soft skin of Claire's neck. Dominic freezes instantly. His gun hits the metal floor, his hands shooting up in total surrender. But Raymond pauses to gloat. He is drowning in 30 years of feeling worthless, desperately begging for an audience. He starts screaming about rotting in the gutter, while Dominic lived this beautiful life. It is the tragic flaw of every arrogant ego. The very second you pause your life to demand respect from the people who hate you, you have already lost the battle. The psychological rot eating away at Raymond is honestly terrifying to watch. His eyes are wide and completely empty as he smiles, bragging about the day he murdered Dominic's first wife. He paints a sick picture of how he will hunt down their child next, acting like his cruelty is some kind of dark poetry. But under the shadow of his arm, Claire makes her move. Just a tiny turn of her wrist, a soft click of steel. Driven by the pure, desperate need to stay alive, she buries the knife deep into his leg. Raymond screams, his finger pulling the trigger in a massive panic. The bullet rips through the air, barely tearing the side of her ear. There is an ancient truth written in blood here. If you push someone into a corner for too long, they will eventually bite back. Listen closely, because this is the exact moment everything has been building toward. Dominic throws Raymond onto the bloody metal floor, driving his knee right into his chest. His finger is tight on the trigger. 20 years of suffocating sadness and raw anger are screaming at him to pull it and end this guy. The tension in the room is heavy enough to break glass. But then Claire steps out of the smoke. Her face is pale, blood soaking her collar. But her voice is completely steady. She tells him to drop the weapon. For the first time in his life, Dominic's hand shakes. He looks at the monster on the floor, takes a deep breath, and steps away. We all need to remember this life lesson. Real power is not destroying the people who hurt us. It is finding the strength to walk away. Listen to me, guys. We have to unpack the absolute genius of Claire's choice. She sentences this broken man to a living hell. She knows a narcissist rotting in a concrete box while his family realizes he is a monster is way worse than death. Dominic stares into Raymond's panicked eyes, finally getting her brilliant cruelty. He lifts his heavy pistol, bringing the steel grip crashing down against his temple. He whispers a quiet dedication to Claire and Sophia as the guy just folds. In that single crunch, an empire of terror is completely wiped out. By 3 a.m, federal sirens are screaming everywhere. Salvatore Bianchi gets wheeled out on a gurney, chained up like a wild animal. Here is a real-life lesson. Every evil empire built on the chains of others will eventually cage its own kings. Now pan the camera across the grim reality of this absolute bloodbath. Raymond Falcone, the guy who literally thought he was an untouchable god, gets marched straight into the blinding glare of red sirens. His wrists are bound in plastic, dried blood flaking from his cheek as Agent Chen coldly reads his rights. The butcher's bill is totally devastating. 11 syndicate men are dead. 3 enforcers bled out on the freezing concrete. The worst part, a 31-year-old agent with 2 small kids caught a stray bullet. Meanwhile, Marcus Webb somehow survives a grueling 7-hour surgery. It is a total tragedy painted in blood and shadow. The simple truth we must all eventually accept is that our worst, most violent actions almost never hurt only the people we originally aimed at. The ward lights flicker as the surgeon drops a crazy truth bomb on Tommy. A mere 2 centimeters separated a medical recovery from a cold morgue slab. It is terrifying how a tiny fraction of an inch dictates the boundary between tragedy and survival. Outside, Claire and Dominic sit in the heavy shadows of an idling ambulance. Claire winces, rocking a massive dark contusion on her skull. Dominic leans in, his hands shaking as he meticulously cleans the dried blood from her bruised face. He has been starved of her touch for 6 torturous years. She whispers into the dark, asking if the nightmare is finally over. He locks eyes with her and warns that the trials are literally just beginning. Life teaches us a hard lesson here. Surviving physical trauma is merely the very first step toward true healing. Watch closely with me as Dominic details his crazy pact with the government. The most terrifying predator in Boston is voluntarily tearing down his entire criminal empire. He keeps the legit shipping lines, completely cutting away the toxic tumor of his illegal cash. He locks eyes with Claire, promising he is totally done with the blood-soaked pursuit of dominance. He chooses to be a husband and a father instead. When she searches his face for any sign of doubt, we witness a massive emotional breakthrough. He gently lifts her chin. 6 years ago, the shadows dictated his violent path, but today he reclaims his soul by dawn. The harbor is bathed in warm light as they pull away in a quiet sedan. The vital lesson here is beautiful. No matter your dark history, you always retain the absolute power to choose a different tomorrow. The sedan hums steadily, driving north for 4 solid hours as Dominic finally sheds his heavy psychological armor. He confesses to 6 years of blind fidelity. The camera lingers on his exhausted face as he describes spending every single Saturday morning speaking to an empty headstone. The guy was using his violent mob empire as a manic defense mechanism to outrun the crushing reality of his grief. Every morning, he would rotate his wedding band 3 times, an obsessive grounding technique born in the sunlight of their honeymoon. For 2,000 days, he locked himself in a dark prison of unwavering loyalty. It is a haunting image of human attachment. The simple truth we find here is that sometimes we hold on to our deepest pain, simply because it is the only thing left of the people we once loved. Stick with me here, because the psychological toll of this isolation is absolutely wild. In the quiet car, Claire reveals the clinical reality of her trauma. When her child was born in the shadows, it was Elena who anchored her through the panic, not Dominic. For years, Claire constructed a wild delusion, framing the absent father as a deceased hero to cope. The emotional conditioning is painfully evident. Every night she read her daughter a book on constellations, hardwiring the shape of Orion into her mind as a coping mechanism. By noon, their tires crunch over a remote gravel drive in the Vermont woods. The human mind is a tragic, beautiful thing. We learn that it will always build a desperate bridge back to its deepest attachments, regardless of the terrible pain they might cause. The camera frames an isolated cabin, Thick smoke venting into the freezing air, Elena emerges. Holding Claire in a desperate embrace to release years of terror, she offers Dominic a slow, heavy nod. We are witnessing the complete collapse of a 6-year defensive barrier. The burden of hatred is finally exhausted. Suddenly, a tiny figure occupies the wooden doorway. The kid stands barefoot on the frozen grass. Her piercing gaze locks onto Dominic's right hand before scanning his terrified eyes. She asks her weeping mother if this man is truly her father. Claire, overwhelmed by raw emotion, chokes out a confirmation. But notice the heartbreaking realism here. The kid does not rush forward. We quickly learn that real trust always requires consistent proof, not just shared genetics. The kid processes the adult with the cold detachment of an analyst. She tilts her head, demanding to know if he retains the motor function of an embrace. Explaining her mom warned his absence might have degraded this skill. The psychological impact on the former kingpin is catastrophic, stripping away his violent defenses in a microsecond. He collapses to one knee on the frozen earth. He exhibits a massive emotional rupture, his shoulders shaking as tears fall uninhibited. He chokes out a desperate plea, insisting his muscle memory for holding her never degraded. Slowly the child steps forward and initiates contact. The broken family stands frozen in the morning light. Severe trauma will always break us apart. But genuine vulnerability is the only mechanism that pieces us back together. Let us skip ahead 4 months to the heavy marble of a Boston courtroom, guys. The legal consequences here are brutal. The state drops a 71-page teardown on Raymond Falcone, exposing his organized violence and demanding lifelong containment without parole. Beside him, Bianchi is staring down 40 years of forced isolation. By the 3rd day, Dominic takes the witness box. He is operating under an immunity agreement, hammered out over 19 agonizing hours of psychological warfare in a windowless room. The former apex predator is methodically dismantling his own bloody hierarchy. We learn a dark, invaluable truth in this room today. Loyalty is just a romantic myth among wolves, and betrayal is simply a visceral survival reflex when the iron-celled door threatens to close forever. He coldly liquidates his underworld network for legal absolution. For 6 relentless hours, he absorbs rapid-fire interrogation, his nervous system completely suppressed. His vocal pitch remains a dead flatline. On the 5th day, the atmosphere shifts as Claire takes the stand. Stripped of all hyper-vigilance, wearing an unremarkable blue dress, she projects overwhelming psychological dominance. She verbally deconstructs a 6-year trauma cycle, from the initial shock in a parking lot to the visceral violence of the waterfront. Her cognitive recall is so rapid, the court reporter must halt the proceedings. The gallery enters a collective freeze response. We are reminded that true power does not require a weapon. It merely requires a survivor willing to speak the absolute unfiltered truth. Falcone sits restrained at the defense table, unable to break eye contact, when her testimony wraps up. Claire focuses entirely on the architect of her suffering. Her approach is a masterful deployment of psychological warfare. She denies him the hatred a narcissist craves for validation. Instead, she offers clinical pity for his 5-year-old son, doomed to abandonment. She states he prioritized his twisted need for dominance over his own child's development. That realization bypasses every mental defense he possesses. The sociopathic facade shatters instantly. The untouchable kingpin drops his heavy head, hollowed out by profound cognitive dissonance. We learn that our most devastating defeats come not from hatred, but from realizing exactly what our blind pride has destroyed. You and I have to look at this ending together, because the predator begins to hyperventilate, weeping with the loss of ego control. The jury finalizes his lifelong containment, while Bianchi absorbs a 42-year isolation mandate. But the true resolution occurs in the cold marble corridor. Sophia is standing there with her young son. She severed her trauma bond the moment Dominic confessed the extent of his deception. She confronts Claire, her voice trembling as she offers a profound apology for the collateral damage caused by their shared captor. Claire kneels to validate the innocent child, then rises to embrace the other woman. We see clearly that true liberation often comes when victims of severe abuse finally recognize their own surviving spirit in one another. Moving forward, we watch these shattered characters try to rebuild. Claire holds Sophia close, whispering that the kid is finally free from all that toxic mafia violence. Against all odds, Dominic actually buries his darkest revenge instincts. He takes the government deal and flips his entire criminal syndicate into a totally legit shipping business. 140 hardened mob operatives get retrained for normal office jobs. Imagine a guy who used to break legs for a living now sitting in a chair as a chief operating officer, while their lawyer finally draws a hard legal line they cannot cross. It is a grueling end to a crazy vendetta, but it drops a massive truth bomb on us. You and I are never permanently chained to the absolute worst mistakes of our past. Real change is actually possible when you finally step up and choose to walk away from the fire. Let the camera linger on the quiet aftermath. Harold wrote a book on this mob tragedy, offering Claire a huge cut of the profits. She took that cash and dumped every cent into a charity for incarcerated families, desperately trying to scrub away her invisible scars. Across town, Agent Chen accepted his fancy medals, soaking up that cold government validation. But the real story is frozen in this one newspaper clipping. They stand on the courthouse steps in a bitter March wind. The public hyped it as a massive triumph, cheering for the girl who brought down a mafia empire. But zoom in on their faces, you only see dead-eyed exhaustion. There is zero victory here. Survival is not some flashy parade. Sometimes surviving just means you are the last one breathing in the rubble, stuck with the brutal job of starting your life completely over. As the screen fades to black, a chilling reality check hits us. Just burying our pain is a total illusion. The ghosts of our trauma always claw their way back up, usually triggered when a little kid casually drops the horrible truths that adults are too terrified to admit. This insane story leaves us with a heavy lesson, guys. True power is not about being a ruthless mob boss or flexing cruelty. Real strength is a mother enduring 6 agonizing years of pure terror just to keep her baby safe from the crossfire. It is a ruthless kingpin, actually burning down his own legacy, trading a massive empire for one quiet breakfast with his daughter. And the deepest bravery, that belongs to a tiny kid with a beat-up toy, staring down the fake adult world without blinking. We only begin to heal when we finally stop running and face the ugly truths head-on.
At the end of the story, Dominic wins in a way that is very different from what people might expect from a mafia boss. He could have chosen revenge, blood, and continued power. He could have killed Raymond Falcone in the warehouse. He could have expanded his empire after defeating the Bianchi family. Instead, he chooses something harder and more meaningful: peace. This is the strongest educational message of the ending. Real victory is not always destroying your enemies. Sometimes real victory is refusing to become like them. Claire stops Dominic from killing Raymond because she understands that death would be too quick. A federal cell, a lost family, and the knowledge that revenge destroyed his own son's future become a heavier punishment. Her wisdom pulls Dominic back from becoming ruled by rage. Later, Dominic chooses to cooperate with the FBI, dismantle the criminal parts of his organization, and rebuild his life around legitimate work. He gives up the identity of boss so he can become a husband and father. That choice matters. It shows that power is not worth more than family. For years, Dominic survived by becoming cold. People called him the Winter King because grief had frozen part of him. But Lilia's existence changes everything. A daughter, a wife returned from the dead, and a second chance at family remind him that life is not meant to be spent ruling through fear. For viewers, the lesson is clear. The highest form of strength is knowing when to stop. Ambition, status, revenge, and control can make a person powerful, but they cannot make a person whole. Dominic's greatest victory is not defeating Raymond or Sal Bianchi. His greatest victory is choosing pancakes, fatherhood, honesty, and peace over an empire built on blood. That is the real ending, not revenge but restoration.